Triola.
Here. Here.
Okay, thank you. Matt Hollinshead,
Here.
Matt Clark,
Here.
Beverly. Okay, and Bob is not going to be here. We know that. I know that already.
Yep.
Kevin,
Here.
Rabbi,
He is joining right now.
hi, Rabbi. Is he on? Hi, Rabbi.
We're just doing roll call, so if you can just say you're present, Rabbi Kasowitz, that'd be great.
Okay. Anne,
And Ann Langford, yep, I'm here.
okay, Kathy Bell. Okay. Kiros. Lindsay,
Here.
Jay Mastrud.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. If
Okay.
anyone else joins, I'll let you know. Welcome, everybody. Just a quick reminder on some procedures while we're on Zoom. If you want to ask a question, try and use the chat, or at least use the chat to let me know if you have a question for public comment. Tonight we'll do the approval of agenda. We have Maureen Michalski from Ryan Companies here to give us an update, and so we'll have the public comment after that. So let's go ahead and approve the agenda. I need a motion.
So moved.
I second it.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the tonight's agenda, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay. All right, the agenda is approved as presented. So we have approval of the prior meeting minutes. In your board packet, there are some requested changes. So we need to approve, we'll need a motion to consider those requested changes, I guess.
Can you put the changes up on the screen, please? Oh, gosh. Okay.
Hold on. I think Brad's flipping through them.
Yeah, flip it through them, Barry, sorry. But-
There, nope,
Let's see here.
those are the minutes.
Okay, so the changes, let me guess, I went the wrong way. We go the other way. So,
Here you go.
this is
These are
right
the
here.
changes.
All of this?
Yes.
Oh.
So,
I
I
can't
can
type all
run-
that right now.
What?
I can't type all of that right now.
No, no,
so-
no. You don't have to type it right now, but we have to, in order to add these changes, we have to actually approve that.
Okay.
And so I need a motion so that we can discuss.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll run through them really quick. I just had an easy clarification. I wasn't sure which variance on the Highland Bridge, which lot site you were talking about. And so I just wanted that clarified. And then Marge sent several additions requesting on treasury report, adding to community engagement, an update regarding the open space hearing from Ward 3. I was not at this board meeting, so I can't comment on those, so others can comment. And then regarding the golf survey, she had some additional comments, and regarding the September board meeting. And I just, on this new other business comments, I want to say two quick things. I think that Rebecca's summary appropriately captured those items and what's here. And I also would like to I guess ask Marge that, Marge and I had an opportunity to specifically talk about the new business item. I think that I heard her complaint and understand, and I made a suggestion to make a change that I was planning to implement tonight so that that could go more smoothly and people could be included. Unfortunately, I know by the time we get to the end of our lengthy board meetings with full agendas, sometimes I move through that a little too quickly. So I did acknowledge that and have a plan. And so I feel like that those comments are not really necessary to be added to the minutes. Okay, Tom, please go ahead.
Yes, if you can scroll up a little bit to the 2 items regarding the treasurer's report. Please clarify the following under CDC and the like, and then treasurer's report. Would it be meaningful to attach treasurer's report and draft for 2022 operating budget as done with the ED report? Please note that Kathy puts out a packet before the meeting. One of the items in the packet is a treasury report. And if you click on the treasury report, you would have brought up the draft 2022 operating budget, and you would see that that was included before the meeting. I downloaded it, so I had it handy before the meeting. Now, do note that when initially posted, not all of the treasurer's reports are absolutely up to date as to the end of the month because they are posted a little bit early. So it's beneficial to look a day or two before the meeting if you want the most recent up-to-date version of a report, because Kathy will report those, for example, the end of the month bank statement as it becomes available. Second, also the treasurer to define innovation grant money. Just to let you know that I defined innovation grant money at the June 3rd meeting. Those monies are specifically for community engagement activities and activities related to the equity plan. If you were to read the minutes of the June 3rd meeting, you would find that I provided a definition for the innovation grant money. I also afterwards went on site to the St. Paul City website, and it took me about 5 minutes, and I came up with a historic definition of it. So that is also available. And this historic definition basically says that the monies are for, again, to support, quote unquote, community engagement work. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Tom. Marge, go ahead, please.
I'm gonna see if it works. Is audio working on my laptop, guys?
Yes,
Are you
it
hearing
is.
it? Oh, good, because I logged into my phone too. Sorry about that difficulty there. Thank you, Tom. Yes, I know that you included that in our meeting materials. I wasn't disputing that at all. I just said I would recommend it being attached to the minutes. So again, this fills the transparency that we're trying to do in our work, as well as the innovation definition, just to, again, put things front and forward to make it easy. Just following up on your comment, Michelle, absolutely, we talked after this meeting. And however, that was conversation that happened during the meeting that you weren't there. And I would, again, suggest it be attached to the minutes. Thanks.
Thanks, Marge. Any other comments? Okay, then we'll have a vote to amend the minutes with these suggestions. And then if the amendments are approved, then we'll vote to approve the minutes. All those in favor of adding these amendments, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Sorry,
Okay,
guys. I can't.
can't tell.
I can't tell. Okay. I'll do a roll call. Brad,
A,
sorry, what was that?
yes, A,
Thank you. Rebecca,
Yes,
Tom,
No,
Tim,
No.
Marge,
Yes,
Mark,
No.
Matt Hollinshead,
Yes.
Matt Clark,
Yes.
Bev is not here. Kevin Vargas,
No.
Rabbi Kasowitz,
Yes.
Ann Langford.
No.
Kathy is not here, right? Kathy Bell.
no, she's not.
Lindsay,
Nay.
and my vote is no. So that's 7-6. So the amendments to make all of these additions don't pass. So we will vote on the minutes as presented, as recorded and submitted by Rebecca. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay.
nay,
Nay,
Okay, I heard only 2 no's. Tom, so the minutes are approved. Tom, go ahead.
just very briefly, I don't think the treasurer's report should be attached because there is some private information in some of the treasurer's reports. That's the main objection that I have. They should not be part of the minutes. They are private documents. They include bank statements, who gets paid what, and that is not public information.
Thank
Or
you
should
for
not
that.
be broadly disseminated as public information.
Thank you for that clarification, Tom. Marge, I'm sorry, do you have your hand up again, or is that from before? I missed it.
oh no, it just needs to be taken down, sorry.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Maureen, thank you for joining us tonight. We have allotted 45 minutes for you to give us an update, and we're excited to hear what's new and ongoing at Highland Bridge.
Great,
Do you-
thanks for having me. Can
Do
you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we can. Do you want to share anything? Should I give you screen sharing?
I will if you wouldn't mind.
And you
No
should be set
problem.
up for that, Maureen, right now. So
Great.
Okay,
Thank you, Jenna.
perfect, great.
if you're having troubles.
Great,
let
well,
us know.
for those I haven't met yet, I'm Maureen Michalski with Ryan Companies. I am the Vice President of Development, and so my job is to work on the development side of the Highland Bridge site in Highland Park. And so I'll just run through a brief update on the project, and we can have some questions and answers afterwards. If any of you attended the community update we did on the 18th of October, there's going to be some similar material here, but I've also updated some of the photos. The photos that you see for most of the site work in this presentation were taken in on October 19th, I think. So there's even some more progress that we've had since these photos. So I will just walk through. Let's see if I can advance this presentation here. Oops, excuse me, sorry. Down here. There we go. So I'll start with the infrastructure recap from this year, a few different things, and I'll show some photos. So a lot of work done this year on the parks and outlots. So the Gateway Park and Unchi Maka Park, which are the parks at the northwest corner of the site and the south end of the site. We have been working on the Mississippi River Boulevard Crossing project, which provides a pedestrian and bike connection under Mississippi River Boulevard from the Highland Bridge project in Unchi Maka Park underneath the roadway and to the top of Hidden Falls Regional Park there. And that will be completed next week. The crossing project street portion of it will be completed next week. And so the roadway will reopen on November 10th. And the rest of the work on the tunnel and associated items will be concluded in the springtime. We've also been working on the Central Water Feature in Pacific Plaza, which I'll also use some photos of. And of course, if you've been by the site or around the site in the last few months, you know we've done work on the vehicular roadways and rights of way around the site, including the completion of that Montreal and Cleveland. So a couple of photos here show you current status. This is the Gateway Park at the northwest corner of the site. Some of the main features of this park include the linear skate park elements. You can see that there's a bowl that one can skate in at the northwest corner of the site here, and a variety of biofiltration basins to help manage the stormwater. And then of note is that there are 3 basins, 2 on either side of this wet pond. The wet pond will remain wet all the time, whereas the other 2 spaces will be mostly dry except for when there's large rain events, and you'll be able to transverse and walk through those spaces. The black piping you see here is temporary and will go away. The other park that we've been working on behalf of the City of St. Paul is Ushimaka Park, which means Grandmother Earth in Dakota. And that park is at the very south end of the site. So this is a view looking southwest. This is Montreal Avenue here, the central water feature to the right. And then you can see the north end of the park, which includes this dog park feature here in the foreground, a children's tot lot play area here. You can see a little slide that we've been working on there. And then, of course, this is where the water comes from the central water feature, stormwater, down a series of cascading pools and through the site here. And I'll show you another view of the park as well. This is the view from the south end of the park, looking at that Mississippi River Boulevard crossing here. So you can see as you move down through Ushimaka Park, you'll be able to access the stone area down here via walking path and be able to access this water. And there are some stepping stones here you could even walk on, and there's a stairway just on the other side here to walk up. We're still working on the pathways, and we've made some progress even since this photo. Some of the other amenities in this park include the sand volleyball courts, the hammocking areas on the south end, which are off the screen here to the left, and a pavilion structure. The Mississippi River Boulevard crossing, we actually have a roadway paved in there and curbed now since this photo was taken. So this is all paved as we get ready to reopen next week. But you can see here the condition of what happens. One can go underneath this area and be able to walk, go down this area here and be able to walk adjacent to where the water comes out and cross, go underneath Mississippi River Boulevard. This is a waterway here, and then stand on an overlook for Hidden Falls Regional Park. The other thing we've been working on, central water feature, which is the iconic in the center of the development as part of the master plan. This manages most of the stormwater on site and is a great amenity. Some of the previous renderings you've probably seen for that area. So this is what it looks like in real life as of towards the middle to end of October. So you can see that we've got the island in here. We've got access points to the water, as well as some hammocking areas here. You can see the Boland Avenue Bridge and the various walking paths and green space here. We're looking northwest in this particular view. And this is another view of the central water feature looking from the south up. You can see here we've already got some of the site seating elements installed and lighting fixtures, and then these pathways along the side and the landscaping as well. The other thing we've been working on is the Civic Plaza, which is just north of the central water feature. So again, this view is looking south on the site. And this is what it looks like as of again, mid-October. We have installed the turf that's in here. That's right, all this whole area in the middle is turf. And then this area, this small circle on the south side is pavers that'll be installed here. Yet this fall, excuse me, you can see we've installed the trees and the landscaping has been installed since this photo was taken. So this is a view looking north, essentially up towards Ford Parkway. Here's an overview of the site so you can see the streets and pathways that we've installed over the last year. These are in the process of being turned over to the city right now. And so you can see Mount Curve here in the foreground, Boland Avenue, major east-west Montreal, connecting Mississippi River Boulevard to Cretin Avenue, and the variety of ped bike paths, Beechwood, Village Way, Saunders, that transverse the site. In terms of the site opening, we'll have a couple of different phases over the next 6 months or so here for the site opening. And when I say site opening, I mean the removal of the fence around the site, the ability to access by the general public. So phase one will be when Pulte opens their model building. That will be in early next year. So a couple of images here that'll help you understand that. So Pulte's model home unit is over here near Mississippi River Boulevard off of Boland Avenue. They have 4 units there that'll be opening early winter next year. And so the public will have access to come in here, and they have a temporary parking lot adjacent to those model homes that people will be able to come in here and come into that parking lot to visit the model homes when those are open in early next year. The perimeter fencing, as you see here in red, will remain around the site during that initial time. And then once we have the first residents living on the site later spring, early summer next year, we would be planning on removing the perimeter fence overall, and then the public would have access to the Gateway Park in the northwest here, Unchimaka Park to the south, and then as well as the Central Water Feature and the Civic Plaza. The Civic Plaza will have a little additional work that needs to happen next year as well. And you can see here, these are some of the roadways that you'll be able to traverse in green. We will be having blocked areas so that one cannot go all the way down Cretin, although this Cretin is installed. We'll be keeping that closed off for the time being as this area continues to redevelop over time. So the city public streets you can see here in green will be opening first next year when those parks and civic spaces open. And I'll share this presentation via PDF. I'll send it to Kathy so that everyone has it, and if you want to spend a little bit more time with it. So in terms of some upcoming milestones, I thought I'd work through some of the vertical developments on the site as well. So the first building that you've seen probably if you've gone by the site recently is the first phase of Widener's The Collections, which is where the Lunds and Byerlys will be located. This is a rendering of that building and what it'll look like when it's done. 230 new apartments and the new Lunds and Byerlys grocery store that is expected to open in the summer of next year. Here's what it looks like right now if you haven't been by the site recently. So again, this is at mid-October. We've started to do some cladding and things on the building in that time. So we'll continue to make progress on that. The second phase of the collections is along the Central Water Feature. This is 180 units of multifamily and 2,000 square feet of retail. This has already gone through the site plan review process and was anticipated to start construction this December. We're currently on pause with this project as we seek to understand more deeply the rent control that was adopted recently this week in the city of St. Paul. The next project is the Block 2 mixed-use development along Ford Parkway in Cretin. This is an area of the site, oops, excuse me, go back a couple here. This is the area of the site that's zoned for retail and mixed use and is really meant to be the retail node of the site along Ford Parkway. We were planning for 217 units of multifamily in 3 buildings, 1 on the north side and 2 on the south side of that particular site, and 45,000 square feet at retail. We had been going through the land use approvals process and we're getting ready to submit site plan review, but we pulled those applications as we're on pause trying to understand again the rent control measures adopted earlier this week in St. Paul. This is a site plan review or site plan overview for that site, so you can get a better sense of the connection, the pedestrian connection that was planned between the Civic Square and the Civic Plaza. This is that pedestrian way that is flanked by retail and retail along Ford Parkway as well. You can see residential lobbies in blue to the south and yellow to the north. The parking is accessed via this entry point on Hillcrest Avenue. You go down into underground parking for the retail and for the multifamily buildings, and then some service retail at the back along with loading in the site. One thing that's unique about this particular block is that Hillcrest Avenue is public on this side of the site, and then of course Outlot C is privately owned as part of the master association and maintained by that master association. And Hillcrest Drive to the right here is also a privately owned street. Pulte row homes, everyone's always curious about those and the progress with Pulte. They're going to be releasing their pricing at the end of November, and they are starting virtual appointments with sales consultants in December. Their model will be opening early next year, and the first wins of summer of next year. They have a website unique to them that you can access through the highlandbridge.com website if you're interested in learning more about that. And these are some of the initial phases they plan to develop. So So their first model home units are right here in the lower left-hand corner of this image. It's oriented, so north is to the left and east is to the top. And they will be starting with their row home production along the central water feature here. You can see the darker yellow phases are the ones that will be first developed around the Assembly Union Park. And Assembly Union Park will be constructed next year. So that's, again, another City of St. Paul park. That particular park there is the one that's the neighborhood park focus, which has a children's playground area, pickleball courts, basketball courts, and then a large lawn area. This is the photo of Pulte's current status. Again, they've made some progress since this image was taken. And then Presbyterian Homes is working on Marvella, which is a senior housing development, 300 units. And they have begun leasing that, actually. They'll be opening in 2023. And so they do have individuals that are taking housing appointments. I know people have been making deposits for those. They will be opening also a leasing office in the Highland Shopping Center at Cleveland and Ford Parkway later this fall yet. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I have their website linked here as well. Here's some photos of, this is their westerly building, where most of the community spaces are. And then the footings and foundations for the easterly building. This is a photo looking north on the site. Affordable housing is an important part of Highland Bridge. As you all know, 20% of the housing units at Highland Bridge are income restricted. Here's the image from our website showing those locations of the strictly affordable housing buildings. And then this is an image of the market rate buildings that are planned to have 1% of the units as affordable within those as well in the light yellow. The first affordable housing developments on the site are both from Project for Pride and Living, one of our affordable housing partners, and Common Bond. Project for Pride and Living will be starting on the north end of the site in late spring. They're looking to develop 2 buildings, Emma Norton, which is a supportive housing building for women and children, and Nellie Francis Court, which is a workforce housing building, collectively 135 units with 1 level of underground parking there. And then Common Bond Communities is also working towards a spring start for their first affordable housing development on the site. That will be 60 units of senior housing for very low income seniors. And they, again, plan to start construction in the spring. Another thing that's happening at the site is the custom home lots along the river. We have 20 lots for sale right now. We'll have a couple of closings yet this year. And then we expect that the earliest starts on those homes would be in spring of 2022. And the custom home lots are about 1% of the housing at Highland Bridge. And we do have a website, highlandbridgecustomhomes.com, if you're interested in learning more about those. And of course, the medical office building on the site, 63,000 gross square feet. This is right along Ford Parkway and Mount Curve Boulevard. It'll be multi-tenant. We announced in the last month or so that mHealth Fairview will be the lead tenant. We'll also have some primary care and other clinics there, and we do have a little website linked that you can visit for the medical office building. We anticipate starting construction on this in December and would be delivered in 2023. So we're excited to get this medical office building under construction yet this year. And with that, you can always learn more at our website, highlandbridge.com. We did link the PowerPoint and PDF from our October 18th meeting. We also had a housing update meeting that dives more into the pricing and things like that for the housing at the site in the summer. And so all those presentations are on our website there for future reference as well. And with that, I will stop sharing and happy to take any questions.
Maureen, thanks so much for sharing that update. There's exciting progress happening over there. I will open it up to questions. We'll start with board members first, and then if anybody from the public who's joined us tonight has questions, they are welcome to ask them as well. If you are joining us from the public and have questions, could you put your name in the chat? It'll be easier for me to have an opportunity to call on you. Kevin, please go ahead.
Thanks, Michelle. Good to see you again, Maureen. Thank you for the update. 2 questions here. Can you first again summarize how many units of the multifamily housing are put on pause because of the new rent control ordinance? And then the second question is on Can you kind of elaborate, if you can, the range of like options from whether things go as normal and we're still going to plan to build these units of multifamily housing after rent control, to maybe the more extreme end is we change our plans and here's what they might be instead?
Sure. Happy to answer that question to the best of my ability. We're still pretty early on in the rent control
Right,
process.
right.
So I mean, truthfully, it's really hard to tell. We're just looking to understand with greater clarity what the dynamics are and things like that. So what I would say is that the projects I mentioned this evening on blocks 2 and 11 are about 400 units of housing. Those were the ones that were sort of imminently getting ready to progress or going through a land use process and hadn't started yet. But we had also been planning to advance multiple other blocks on behalf of Widener next year as well. And so we're still working to understand again what the impacts might be of rent control and how that might progress. And of course, as you know, as you may know, or if you don't know, I probably should elaborate that the Highland Bridge affordable housing, the financial structure of it is predicated on the market rate housing providing tax increment financing to support the very low income targets for the affordable housing. So one of the questions we're trying to understand and work through is, if market rate production slows down and the tax increment is not available to support the affordable housing, what does that look like for affordable housing as well? So there's a variety of dynamics that are, still to be determined depending on how things progress at the city. So more to come on that. Did I answer all of your questions? I'm sorry, there were a few questions in there. I wanted to make sure I got all of them, Kevin.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Well, I'll jump in with a quick question. I see the opening for some of the parks next summer, which will be very exciting. The roads, the main roads through like Montreal, Mount Curve, Cretin, when are those expected to, are they going to also open kind of at the same time when there's residents on site, or will they be opening sooner?
The short answer is they will be opening when there are residents on site. If I will share my screen again, if I can. Are you seeing my screen again?
Yes, now we are.
Okay, perfect, great. This is that graphic I had showed earlier, which is really hard to tell in 5 seconds when I'm flipping through. But the green is the roads that will be open in the spring. So you can see you'll be able to come in on Cretin because this is where the Lunds and Byerly's access is and will be open. But you'll have to turn on Boland to go out this way, and you'll be able to go, down Mount Curve into Montreal on the green areas. But you would not be able to come all the way down Cretin. And part of that is we don't want to too many things, but while we're under construction in this area, want to preserve those roadways and just protect them, since they'll be turned over to the city at that point. The city wants to protect them so that they're not damaged. And then the other thing is we avoid the highway shortcuts through the site, and so try to make it a little bit more, slow down the traffic so that people aren't just cutting through the site. So there'll be still access though to all the roadways around those civic spaces and the parks.
Okay, so we can expect next spring, summer, when there's residents on site, that's the first time we'll see roads, any of the roads through there. Okay.
Yeah. And the red, I should note, Michelle, just for clarity too, that the red outlines are where we think the fencing is, the perimeter fencing for the site in the spring. So around the park where we're constructing, but essentially all this area where Pulte and the row homes are will be open and unfenced.
Okay. Well, I'm selfishly very much looking forward to having Montreal punched through to the river and having access to those parks. So looking forward to it. Matt Hollins had also asked a question in the chat on the status of the discussions around car sharing on the site. Do you have any information on that?
Great question. Yeah, Matt, so we are continuing to have conversations with our car and the city of St. Paul. We've been back and forth. We did actually some design work this summer to further clarify the infrastructure and how it might work and get better pricing. So we did do that, advance some design work, and then have been back and forth with the city about some details on that. And so we're waiting right at the moment to understand that a little bit better. But the plan would be to advance. Hopefully we can figure out some logistics and then continue to advance in the spring, infrastructure install. The first area where we were hoping to put hubs with our car, they're in the right of way, by the way, would be along Creighton Avenue on near that Block 3 Lunds and Byerly's development and adjacent to the Common Bonds project. So we don't expect that those hubs would be open or active probably until 2023, but likely trying to target the infrastructure install in that area in 2022. So more to come as we continue conversations with the city on logistics on that one.
That sounds great, though. I mean, at least it sounds like there's positives, forward movement in the conversations. Matt, if you have any other questions as follow up on that, let me know. Otherwise, Tim, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, Maureen. This is Tim Moorhead. So there was an article in the Pioneer Press on the car sharing thing. And I thought our last conversation, you were going to try to, and I think this is what you're trying to do, is work out a situation with the city and with the car sharing where you won't have to come and get a variance for every single building. Is that still the plan, what you're still trying to work out? And I know you're still in the midst of it.
That is correct, Tim. That's a great question. I skipped over that part. I didn't know if anyone was interested in the variances section of that. So yes, we've been having to ask for car share variances because the current master plan requires that we provide parking stalls within buildings, individual project level. And in conversations with our car, they've shifted away from that in-building model. So it doesn't make sense to provide parking stalls for something that doesn't have a car share operator for it. And so we've been focused on this hub model, which is what everyone's moving to. And our car is launching this network with partners like Xcel Energy in the various cities this year and next. They've kicked off the pilot this year, but the bulk of it will come online next year. And so the idea is to tap into that system instead. And as part of that, we need a variance. We need a master plan amendment because the master plan language is such where it's focused on block by block stalls as opposed to a hub model that is in the right of way and not on these individual properties. So we would be hoping to advance next year an amendment to that so that we would then not need to come back because we're advancing this hub model instead.
Thank you, Maureen. Are there any other questions either from the board or members of the public that have joined us tonight? All right, I don't see any, so we will move along. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Maureen, and giving us an update.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Happy to come back whenever you'd all like.
We'll let you know. We'll definitely let you know. I do want to pause for just a minute and make related to the Ryan Company's update on the Highland Bridge site that now is the opportunity. And I haven't seen any comments in the chat, but I'll make a little pause. So if anybody is there, get your hand up, put something in the chat. All right, I don't see any, so thank you. All right, then moving along. Tom, can you give us the update of the treasurer's report, which also will include the draft 2022 operating budget, which should be in the board packet. Brad, can you see if you have that available to put up on the screen? You know, I think it's in a separate folder, so it's probably jumping over this folder. Why don't we let Tom?
It's in the treasurer's folder.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that you need it, and I can explain that in just a second. I'll cover the budget first. This is a little bit of a repeat of last month's budget. Again, we can spend roughly $8,700 a month over the course of the year. We were sitting in the high sevens, but at the end of last month, but we had a number of additional expenses in October. We had a significant postcard mailing for the survey, if you remember, Crosby Community Conversation, Tiff's Community Conversation, Halloween in Highland. So we spent a little bit of money in engagement activities during the month of October. And so we are at currently is, again, our budget is roughly $8,700 a month. And we're up to spending of about $8,200 per month, which still gives us about a $500 per month cushion. So we are in extremely good shape. And I would also add to that, we have not yet received the bill from Tiffany's, but we still expect to have about $2,000 left in the community engagement area. So if somebody wanted to do another community engagement activity, they should probably check and see if we can afford it, but it looks promising if you want to go that route. In addition, our bank balance on October 1 was $33,300. Our bank balance on November 1st was $32,800, down about $500. Again, our goal is to have about 3 months worth of surplus in the bank. This is roughly 4 months of surplus in the bank, so we are in extremely good shape here. End of year is coming up. Kathy has a very old laptop, and I suggested that she take a look at potentially updating the laptop before the end of the year. Be mindful that funds we do not spend before the end of the year that are in our budget go back to the city of St. Paul. So it seems like a reasonable time to update her laptop computer, and it's probably not going to cost a lot of money, but it seems we can afford it at this time. That is the end of my treasurer's report. Going on to the operating budget, it was basically approved by the executive committee and sits out there. You have to look closely. This is truly, truly a draft, and it's pretty much a replica of our budget for 2021. And we will not be able to finalize this until after the first of the year, and the city meets and the council decides what the allocations are for the different district councils, at which point we will come back and finalize this. But we're about as far as you can go, and that's pretty much a mirror of last year's activities. So that's where we are in terms of the draft 2022 operating budget. So
Thank you, Tom. We need to approve both of those, but I want to give a minute in case anybody has questions on either the treasurer's report for this month or on the draft operating budget. Marge, go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Just a quick question. Kathy had sent the email about the drop-off event. She had it in, I think it was like close to $3,000, but it cost like $100. Can you give some background on that?
Yes, I mean, in the past, the drop-off event was a drop-off event for everyone in Highland. And as of COVID, it has been restricted to senior citizens. So it is much, much smaller in scale than it was a couple of years ago. And yes, it's in the budget because there's an expense, but people also paid to drop some items off. So it was actually a very small money maker for us historically, from the records I have, of maybe a couple $100 a year, but nothing more. But yes, you are correct. It's much less than it used to be.
Thanks, Tom. That makes it make sense. I just didn't understand the big swing. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
And Lindsay commented also that the types of products that they would accept was much more limited. So I don't know if that had some of the impact. Hopefully that event we'll be able to have on Shepherd Road again next year, which impacts that budget piece. All right.
It does pay for itself. So it's no big deal if it is a larger scale event.
Yes. Tom, I don't see any other questions. So do you want to go ahead and make a motion first? to
Sure,
approve the
I move
treasurer's report?
approval of the monthly budget report and the very draft operating budget.
I'll second.
All right, we're going to do it together. So all those in favor of approving the treasurer's report for October and the draft 2022 operating budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Please say nay. All right, those are approved. Thank you very much, Tom. I didn't see, is Adam here? I did not see Adam. So I don't know that we have an update from Councilmember Tolbert's office tonight. Maybe we can ask Kathy to check in with them and let us know if there's any updates via email. So I will give the executive committee report, and I have 2 items. First, the board retreat. Thank you to all those who were able to attend. I think the board retreat went very well and was well received. People were very happy to have the opportunity to meet in person. I know that's been difficult this year, and I think exec is going to take up the topic of moving meetings back to in person at our December meeting again. But I would say I think the format was very productive at the retreat, and several people, talked about let's have this kind of small format earlier in the year. So I think, the retreat was later this year than usual, but it's designed to be in the fall to be part of that budgeting and work plan process for the following calendar year and part of the budgeting process for submitting to the city. However, I think there is a really, the format was really great, and it's something we could do earlier in the summer as a training and learning opportunity, as well as getting to know board members. If it hasn't been shared already, I'm sorry, I lost track if Kathy already got this out or not, but I'll make sure on Monday that the kind of summary of discussion makes it to all board members. There were 4 breakout groups, and all board members weighed in on all of the topics to rank priorities based on the District 15 plan so that our committees can think about what to focus on. And so those will use those kind of comments and that ranking of priorities for our work plan, which everybody should be working on in November. In an unusual situation, transportation has a very full agenda, so we might have to next month. So I don't know when we'll get to our work plan, but we will. And that's really what I have to say about the kind of summary of the retreat. Everyone will get that information. Lindsay also did a nice job presenting an overview of the survey, but she's going to recap that for everybody here now now that the survey closed and we have all the results. So she'll do that later. Does anybody else have any comments on the retreat they want to share with the board? I saw there were some in the chat that were positive feedback. Okay, thank you. So personnel reviews. So I sent you all an email last night. The timeline that exec approved was to roll out the process to the full board tonight, but I wanted to make sure everybody had that information in hand. So exec approved a 3-part process. The first step was to ask Kathy to do a self-review, which is really kind of a summary of her activities for the year. And so Kathy did that and submitted it to exec prior to our meeting last week, and that has been now shared with everybody. I'll make sure that it's also in the board packet for this month so that you can easily get access to it, but I did email that out to everybody. So please take a look at that. And then the second step is all board members are invited to provide feedback. A set of evaluation questions, I think there's 7 questions, were put out there. Jenna put the survey together, and since Jenna's going to step out for maternity leave, I will manage that and collect the results. And then the third step is that exec will review Kathy's summary of activities, all of the comments from the board, as well as a 8-question performance evaluation, and exec will put it all together and then make a recommendation to the board. Because we don't have another board meeting in this calendar year, we have to approve any salary changes in the calendar year because of the budgeting process. We will, exec will make the recommendation after our December 2nd meeting to the full board via email, and we will have an electronic vote. That is all laid out in the timeline that I shared with everyone. And just so everyone understands, the communication coordinator position is directly overseen by the executive director. So Kathy will do Jenna's review and forward that to exec. Exec will make a recommendation to the full board as well. So there will be 2 separate recommendations and votes to come to the full board. Are there any, and I wanted to add also that Brad is going to oversee this process with me. So he and I will lead it, and Zach will make the recommendations. Are there any questions on the process? Okay, thank you. That's all that I have for the executive committee report. I will highlight a couple of things from Kathy's ED report later in the meeting when we get to that. So we'll move to standing committee reports. Lindsay is going to start with community engagement, and we're going to give Lindsay a little bit more time tonight so she can share the survey results with us. Lindsay, thank you.
Great. Yeah. Brad, if you can stop presenting, I think I have the copy of the PowerPoint, which we will also make sure gets distributed to folks. Thanks. Yeah, so as most of you are aware, we did a survey over the past month to help in part guide the discussions we had at the retreat, but also to collect feedback and give our neighbors an opportunity to kind of talk about what is important to them and make sure we keep those in mind as we move into our 2022 project planning strategic work. So you can see we did actually have a really good response compared to other surveys I think we've done in the past. We ended up with 417 responses overall. We did actually have a couple of things I wanted to call out. We had several people comment about the difficulty in prioritizing. So, you know, lots of people were saying things were very important, or, you know, everything's important, which I wanted to call out because I think as a board, we also feel that tension. You know, different things are competing for our attention and for our time, and trying to pick just one is the reality. Like, we do have to focus on some things, and other things we won't have time to address. So it is something where that's a very real sensation from us and from our community as well. We did have some fun one-off mentions. With 3 people wanted a dog park. 1 person mentioned skateboarding, which both of those things are happening, which is kind of nice. We actually had 2 people comment on a deer problem in their specific neighborhood or home, which I thought was kind of funny. And we had 4 craft brewery mentions. We did have a lot of positive comments, which was really nice to see. It kind of went from everything to people being appreciative of the work we're doing, people talking about how much they love Highland, which I think we can all reminisce about as well. And then we also had a lot of people who are actually really thankful for the survey and for the community conversations. So giving a chance to give that feedback and feel like their input is being heard. So that was kind of a nice things to hear. We did also have a fair share of constructive criticism, and some of these things for me were really challenging to read, but I think they were also super important for us to hear. It's sort of the very real perception of how the HDC is operating, what we could be doing better, and areas we probably need to look to improve in. So we do have a lot of comments around that nature as well. And we will share, I think, all the free text comments with everybody. I did go through and spend many hours categorizing them and trying to sort them into places where people can kind of think about these things in chunks. Speaking of accessibility, we actually had 37 people specifically request a virtual option. So if we do look at moving our board meetings in place, we do have to remember that accessibility and the convenience of an online meeting has been really beneficial to a lot of people. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, and then each of the committees also had their fair share of comments that I tried to pull out and categorize into at least basic chunks so folks will be able to review those and see that information. So the first thing I wanted to start out talking about was the demographics. And it's important to look at because surveys are a great chance to connect with our community and get feedback. However, they only represent the interests of the people who responded to the survey. So I think that while certainly you can't ignore survey results, and I would not propose doing that, you also need to remember that the opinions that are being presented are not necessarily representative of the whole community. They might have a slightly more specific focus of based on the demographics or based on the people who are interested in responding. And regardless of whether they responded or not, we still represent all of Highland. So it's important to keep that in mind as we read through the comments and look at the priorities of the different folks that did respond. So for example, we had about a little over 50% of our respondents were ages 55 to 65 plus, which is sort of out of sync with how, what those populations are overall at Highland. So it's good to remember that, we're definitely doing a great job at outreach to folks who are in the age group, but, we hardly got any people who are 18 to 24. And that would include pretty much any student who lives here, any children who are home for the summer. I guess it's not summer anymore, but who might be staying at home and commuting to college. So we're definitely doing better at some outreach than others. And capturing people's attentions. Similarly, we had an overwhelming response from homeowners. So 80% of the people who responded identified as a homeowner, whereas only about, I think it was 18% identified as renter, which obviously our makeup in Highland is very different from that. So the priorities can swing kind of one way or the other, depending on what you're looking at. Similarly, we had a lot of respondents check that they identify as white. I think that about 80% marked that. And while certainly we do have a large white population in Highland Park, we also have a very large population that is not white. So I think we only had 2% of respondents were Black or African American. And, overall in Highland, we have a significantly larger population. So I think part of it is making sure we keep that in mind, but also thinking about how we can do better next time, and are there ways we can improve outreach to the demographics we really missed in this survey. So top priorities overall, really very overwhelmingly people are concerned about crime right now. If you read through a lot of the comments are about crime. We did also have some interesting feedback at the community conversations where a lot of people said, crime seems like a big deal, but we also read it on Nextdoor every day. And so, it can be that people's perception of crime isn't necessarily the reality. So we did have a lot of people write in comments as well who said, I haven't experienced an uptick in crime, and I do feel that Highland Park is still a very safe community, but it was definitely on people's minds. Affordable housing, so on and so forth. Transportation was very high, businesses, parks. So the things that we see come up really frequently were still the top priorities for people. It's interesting though, when you actually kind of start to slice the data, if you think about, again, who's represented in this data, you're able to kind of slice and dice these a little bit. So if you slice and dice the top priorities by homeowner versus renter, you can see we have quite a number of homeowners who are more interested or more concerned about crime, whereas renters' top priority is affordable housing. So that is something to, again, keep in mind, that priorities, saying the top priority isn't necessarily going to be the perfect match for every single thing. So you always have to take survey results with a grain of salt. And similarly, we had folks who identified as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. Their top item was affordable housing. And whereas a lot of folks who identified as white were, again, interested in that public safety and crime piece, but affordable housing still pops up there as a couple of high things, along with businesses and transportation. So looking at the way that we arranged the survey, a lot of people asked for rank choice. However, it's very difficult to kind of slice and dice that data. I personally am not technically savvy enough to do it very well. So instead we asked, what's your first priority? What's your second priority? So public safety and crime came out on top again, but you can kind of see it starts to become a little bit more equal in the second priorities. So people are really concerned about roads and bikes and pedestrians. They're concerned about public green spaces, businesses, affordable housing. So similar similar items. And then I also sliced and diced, what would a person's second priority be if they chose a different priority as their first one. So for people who voted public safety as their top priority, taxes was really very frequently their second choice, and transportation. And similarly, people who said housing, the top second choice was transportation. But you can see that the correlation isn't quite as strong on some of those as you go down. So, but just thinking about, again, how do you think about the data and what does it mean to us? Where are those priorities tied? What are the things that really connect and drive, one thing affects another. So we did have questions specific to each of the committees. So, what is the area that's most important to you for transportation? Certainly we had road maintenance kind of pull out in the front, and traffic congestion. So a lot of interest in cars, but we still had a really robust interest in pedestrian safety and bike trails and bike lanes. That's good too. And again, there's comments about all of these things, so you can read some of the free text comments as well. For community development, the top thing that came out was the development on impact and neighbors. Obviously, one of the biggest trends for that in comments was about the Highland Bridge development. A lot of people had a lot of opinions about it. And then we also had, a pretty high interest in affordable housing. And then of course, businesses and parks and green spaces. So things that we've definitely heard before, but it's good to kind of know about how people are thinking about these things and how they affect their daily life. And then for the Community Engagement Committee, certainly crime came out as the top. I debated about adding this to any of the categories because with the way things have been and the amount of chatter there is about crime, I think that was going to come out on top of just about anybody's priorities. But we did get some good feedback about having more community events that are just for fun or family friendly, as well as focusing on social justice work. So I do think that there's certainly some good information here as far as what are the priorities that people think about when they think about community engagement. The environment is also up there. Okay, well, I'll speed through the rest of them. A lot of these people had never attended a meeting. Very frequently, a lot of folks said that the date and time was inconvenient, or they just were not really clear as to what the value was. But we had a shocking number of people who were unaware of the meeting date and time. And there were a lot of requests for an agenda published in advance, which I know we do. So I think looking at how we're publishing those or where people can access those might be something we should look at in the future, because a lot of people said that they would attend if there was a topic of interest to them. And I think part of it is they don't know what we're going to discuss in the next meeting. So thinking about if we can even drill down to like what's going to be the one keystone presentation and put that in the Highlander, for example, or publish that on Facebook as that being like the keynote piece for each of those. That might be a way to get more people aware and interested, because a lot of people said they were interested, but they just weren't quite sure how to get involved or what we did or what we were going to talk about. We also did have a lot of people talk about the HDC purpose and mission. So again, we're going to have those surveys available, the comments available, so you can read through those. We had a lot of people say that they like, online. We also had a lot of people who say that they preferred communication via, more analog sources. It's interesting. One of the things that was interesting about communication is we had a lot of people write in My Villager, the Highland Villager, and they did not check the newspaper, which I thought was kind of an interesting correlation, is that in a lot of people's minds, the Villager is not necessarily the same as like a quote unquote newspaper like the Pioneer Press or Star Tribune. So the newspaper would have actually been higher had they checked that for the Villager, which is what I thought of when I did that. So the one big thing that came out of this, this piece is that we really wanted to talk about some of the diversity and pieces that we're looking for. And one of the things I presented at the retreat was in our planning, trying to keep diversity, equity, and inclusion front of mind. We talk about it a lot, and we certainly have done a lot of work in being able to try to get out into the community and meet new people and engage, but we're still kind of lacking in some ways. So what the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee is recommending is that each group in their planning come up with what's called a SMART goal during their committee 2022-year planning process. And the really specific pieces of this is that it's specific, it's measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound. So saying that we want to engage more people is great, but that's not really specific. So you need to be able to say, we actually want to conduct 3 educational meetings about infill housing study. Measurable. So again, how many is it? Is it 1? Is it 3? Time bound by a certain date, have a deadline. And if it's relevant or actionable, like it might be nice to say like, oh yeah, we really want we're going to do the get a new bike lane on this thing. If that's not something we can actually do, then that doesn't really count. So, and then making sure, again, it's relevant. So thinking about the comments we got, but also the people we didn't reach, and how can we try to figure out ways to make inbounds with other demographics that we're not necessarily connecting with. So those were the pieces I had for the survey results. It does look like we have a decent amount of chatting here. I don't know if there were any questions.
Most of that
Oh,
chat
yes. Okay.
about how is it promoted.
Yes.
Thank you for that overview, Lindsay. I would encourage everyone to, we'll make sure that this presentation and the data, just raw exported data, is available so everybody can sift through it. And I would encourage you to take a look at it and take that back to your committees, the relevant pieces back to your committees to think about. I think the thing that was highlighted for me is something that I have found to be a challenge for all of my years on the district council, is just raising the awareness and the value of our organization and what we do. And so, I think simply thinking about how do we drive traffic to our website, because a lot of the information that people say they can't find or are unaware of, I think, is because they are unaware of our website. And so I think that's something to think about. I think our social media posts have gotten much better and much more frequent since Jenna came on board, and hopefully that helps. But we're only getting some people via social media. So does anybody have any questions on the survey or comments on the survey? Okay, well, I hope it will be a piece for ongoing discussion in the committee meetings. I think it's valuable to have this, outreach to the community. Thank you for that overview, Lindsay. Okay, so Lindsay is going to give us now the community engagement updates.
Yes, yeah. So community engagement wise, we hosted several events in October, in case everybody wasn't aware. I think you all actually ended up volunteering at least one, so thank you very much for that. But the couple that came up the past few weeks were the blood drive. So we hosted another blood drive partnering with Memorial. They do a lot of the promotion and a lot of the work for us, so it's a fairly easy event. I think we did end up with a decent number of blood donors, although it seemed like, I think Kathy mentioned that the drop-off piece, so I think we were collecting food this time, was not quite as high as it had been in the past. So something for the community engagement committee to look at and assess those events, the frequency and value and that sort of thing. We also hosted Halloween in Highland, which sounded like it was a really well-attended event. Oh, I should say co-hosted. The Highland Business Association actually organizes the whole thing. We just had a table at it. Which we had some folks handing out stickers and I think glow sticks, which was really fun. I did take we had some feedback, and I think it's good to take to heart that it's just such a hectic thing where people are coming and going that you sometimes don't really get a chance to even engage. So, thinking about whether or not that's where we want to spend our volunteer hours is a good question. It does get our name out, but it doesn't necessarily give us a chance to connect meaningfully. So thinking about that as well when we're looking at the full slate of events that we're going to be doing for the next year. We did also host our community conversations. So for those of you who don't know, we had 2 events, one at Crosby Park on a Saturday morning and one at Tiffany's on a Wednesday evening. They were actually pretty well attended, I think. You had a lot of neighbors come out, and a lot of people were super appreciative of being able to both connect with their other neighbors, but also have a chance to kind of talk about what they've been thinking about with the neighborhood. And so we had a lot of really positive comments about the events themselves. And then I think got a lot of good feedback. We actually met a few people who might be interested in participating, which was kind of cool. We met a lot of people who weren't quite sure what it was and learned more about it. So I think it was a really good opportunity to start doing building some of those basic connections with our neighbors that we've obviously been missing in the past couple of years with COVID. So I think the takeaway from that for me was that we should continue to look at what are some kinds of pop-up events we can do in different neighborhoods to try to connect on a more, meaningful level, specifically around this work. It might be something where we host a similar event, but it's around a specific topic. So people who are really interested in that might drive them more people to come. But being able to actually connect with folks outside of the board meetings, I think was a really valuable opportunity. We also have subcommittees on the community engagement committee who have been meeting. The documentation committee is just starting out, but they're looking at ways to kind of host and keep some of the information we have so that it's more easily accessible for board members, and we can learn kind of from past, especially since it's not always the same people every year. We also had the DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Subcommittee. We met as well. And we have been working on an overall prioritization of goals that we think we're going to be making, suggestions we're going to be making, recommendations we're going to be making to the overall council. And I'm just going to give you a quick teaser of those today. So the one smart equity goal for each committee is one of the recommendations that came out of that. Again, I think we're doing good work and we have a lot of good intentions, but really having an actionable, deliverable thing that we can say, yes, we did this, or no, we didn't, I think is really important, and we've maybe been missing out on in the broader scope of things. We also are proposing some easier changes, we hope, like potentially adding a standing DEI agenda item. So where we actually look at one of the goals of our equity plan, we do review it every year as part of the retreat, but trying to make that more front of mind. So if you think about if you kind of split it out, it can be about 8 goals, and then talking about one of those each time, just to remember that, we did commit to implementing this equity plan, and it's something that we want to be keeping front of mind, and it should be affecting everything that we do, not just a subcommittee that wants to do some things. So another couple are going to be more complicated, and we might have to create some other subcommittees that include other board members to talk about them. We have goals to be more transparent, to be more welcoming, and hold committee meetings that are open. And we think that Robert's rules is something that can be really jarring to people when they first come. I know I was sort of surprised at the formality of a lot of things when I first joined. We do have examples of other groups that did this. So our next step is to really meet with them and just see how things worked, and whether they learned any lessons from that before we go too far down that line. But again, it's identifying barriers and trying to reduce those to people who want to join. We also have a potential item to look at some of our open seats, like the at-large seats, and see if there are any ways we want to restrict them or be more specific about who should be running for those, in order to try to capture some of those groups that we have historically not engaged with as well. So Mac Groveland did this a few years ago, where they created special places for a student, an education person. So that could either be an educator or somebody from the school board, or somebody who works within the school system, faith institution, landlords, and renters were other specific categories. So it'd be something where we'd want to assess, our current makeup and see if there are any areas where we could really benefit from having some targeted, more restricted places for people. We also want to take a look at potentially hiring a community engagement contractor. So this is the biggest item, and I think is going to be the hardest, but it's something we need to talk about now that we're looking at the budget. We do know that other groups have engaged a third-party person to help them with some of their engagement. I think, we have a lot of, Kathy's an amazing staff person. She does a lot of work, but she's only one person. And I think we've historically had a really big challenge in engaging the demographics we have. We've tried for many years now, and we still are not doing it particularly well. So having an expert or somebody who has time that's specifically focused on engaging some of the demographics and groups that we haven't historically connected with as well, I think would be something we should look at potentially. So those were the pieces from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee that we're going to be proposing in the next few months here. I just, again, wanted to kind of give you a brief FYI that those might be coming down the pike here. But we will be meeting likely with some folks from Mac Groveland or Como and talking to them a little bit about what they've done and their successes and what they learned from that. Sorry, that was a long committee update.
Actually, I think it wasn't too bad. Thank you. I would encourage anyone who is interested in any of these particular items to connect with Lindsay and talk about how you can help or be involved on the DEI subcommittee. And some of these things will be broader conversations to break out to other small groups or to have at the board level. So I think these are great first steps for people to mull over and see, you know, where the conversation goes from here. Thank you, Lindsay. I had highlighted in Kathy's executive director's report a couple thank yous I wanted to do on the events. And since Lindsay mentioned them all, I will just say them here. Thank you specifically to Tom, Bob, Brad, and Tim for volunteering at Halloween in Highland. I heard from several friends of mine that it was a great event. It's always a great event that's well received. We were bummed that we had hockey in the middle of it and could not participate in any way. And also thank you to everybody who participated in the community conversations. I'll just echo Lindsay's comments that they were really well received, and I think members of the community found them very valuable. And there's, I know CEC will be discussing what types of events and should we be holding going forward and how, and again, I would be happy to hear feedback from other board members, but I think they're very valuable in raising awareness about our organization and about what we do and just building that connection in the community. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Lindsay on the community engagement topics? All right, seeing none, we will move along to transportation. Matt, can you give us an update, please?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, at our last transportation meeting, we had the opportunity to kind of lay out the different topics that are of concern for our committee and topics that we really want to prioritize this year. So in perfect timing, mark your calendar, November 9th of next week, we will dive headfirst into Edgecombe reconstruction. Barb Mundahl of City of St. Paul Public Works will be out to present what's happening with Edgecombe reconstruction. We'll also have Nick Fisher out for St. Paul Avenue reconstruction. And so Michelle and I will be flyering both St. Paul and Edgecombe to let them know of our meeting, to again work on engagement and work on inviting more people to attend. So if you have any of your residents or neighbors that are asking you about that, are those issues, please encourage them to attend our virtual meeting on the 9th. And we will also be getting an update from Ramsey County's Kevin Rogenbuck on the Riverview Corridor. Personally, I believe that Riverview Corridor is an opportunity to enact and work toward a smart equity goal in terms of really answering some of the access, ingress, egress issues, frankly, that we heard about from Lindsay's work on the survey. When you've got Highland Bridge and all the people that are coming to the area as visitors, as tourists, as residents, as people interested in the area, one of the issues is going to be how are they going to get there, and then how do they move about? So I think personally, and hearing from a number of our committee members and hearing about people passionate about access to and from Highland along the West 7th corridor, and frankly, the Shepherd corridor, it's critical that we get an update on Riverview corridor and really understand and ask what role Highland District Council will have in helping that project move along and going from an advisory role on our behalf to working toward advocacy for that project. And as well as you saw a letter to the editor about kind of a timing opportunity here around the CP rail and potential rail mergers, that there's also opportunity to opine in around redevelopment opportunities along rail corridors. So this will all come, I think, to an interesting head November 9th at 7 p.m. and strongly encourage you to invite others to attend and invite friends of friends and really work on that engagement piece to make sure that that meeting is very well attended. And then I will look for the transportation committee to come out of that and then look ahead to 2022 about how we want to enact some of the ideas that come out of this meeting.
Thank you, Matt. I know as a transportation member, all of these issues are important to me. And so I'm excited to hear them. It's kind of random that we're going to get them all in one night. So definitely a good night to attend. Kathy put together a flyer for the immediate neighbors that we're distributing. I will make sure that gets sent out to the board members tomorrow, so that if anybody wants to share that, it's just the detailed, details about what we're discussing and the agenda. So if anybody wants to share that, you have it and you can do that easily. Thank you. Any questions for Matt or transportation? Okay. Seeing none, we will move along to community development. Tim, can you give us an update, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to. My update should be relatively brief and straightforward. Some of the conversation that we had on variances, we actually kind of talked about in the earlier presentation that Maureen made. The only variances that they're really addressing is the car sharing, because it's not been finalized as to how it's going to look in the future. So each building, since they do not have a viable car sharing option for each building, they have to ask for a variance for each building. So hopefully in the long term, the master plan can be adjusted so we don't necessarily have to deal with that on each individual building. So also at our last meeting, we asked for pastor properties to kind of give an update on what's going on in their network real estate world. And we really, what prompted that is we wanted to find out a little bit more what happened with Menchie's and all that stuff. But what they presented to us was a rebuilding of a site that they currently own along Mississippi River Boulevard that I believe is a two-story building. It's a little north of the big 740 property. And what they're planning on doing is, since there's a shortage of housing, they're reacting to that and they want to put up a bigger building, and they're in the planning stages for that. And it's going to be, if I got it correctly, it's going to be a 4-story building, and they're going to make it work on the existing property. They don't envision any variances or anything, but they're still in the development process for that. Nothing specific, although we're hearing some rumblings that there could be some conversation with what to do with the vacant Menchie property next to the theater. So more to come with that, I think, in the future. We'll see what happens. The other thing is we got an update from Maureen, and I don't remember the other person who is the engineer with handling the sustainability on the Highland Bridge site. It was encouraging that they're trying to do as much as they can to make the site as sustainable for our future population on this planet as it can be. The one thing I thought was pretty positive, and I didn't know this, is that they're going to put solar panels on the top of the building where Lunds is going to be. I had no idea that that was going to take place. So they walked through several things that they're trying to do to improve the efficiency and the sustainability of that whole site. So I look for that to continue to go forward, and it was just encouraging to see that and hear that. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? I see there's a chat here.
I think it's an old chat.
Oh,
Or
it's an old chat.
not,
Okay.
I think it's, oh wait, actually, no, I take that back. It just popped up. Matt says, we have some gaps in commercial services in Highland, a post office and a hardware store. Any?
I'm not gaps. You mean a post? Matt, maybe you can just jump in and ask your question with more detail.
Yeah, sure. I have voicemailed, and I talked to Maureen Mokowski several months ago also For example, and I think this comes under community development because it is speaks to the nature of what kind of commercial tenants might come into vacant properties. For example, I think it would be great if community development could consider what is missing commercially in Highland and whether and how to raise the issue. And my two examples, post office and hardware store, are clear examples of what we don't have here. And you know, as a member of the transportation committee, for example, the more things we can put here in Highland, the less people have to drive around to elsewhere to access. So it's not just the direct benefit of having those services available. It's also the collateral benefits of less demand for less traffic congestion, and there's others, I'm sure, too. So I just raised that question, Tim, to see if that would be appropriate for the agenda at some point in your committee, how you feel about that. Thank you.
Matt, I feel good about that. That's good information. You know, if I could walk to a post office, I would definitely do it. I know that there's a mini post office at what's the little grocery store?
Or on Randolph and Hamline.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if we could do something similar to that, so I will take those agenda items, and if you have any other ideas of what services we would like in a retail environment in that building, please forward it along. And I think there was 4 people that wanted a microbrewery, so we'll have to see if we can pursue that one a little bit. But anyway.
I think there's more than 4 people in Highland that would support that.
One example that I raised with Maureen Mikulski was that when the new Lunds opens, the old Lunds would be vacant. And that would be, to me, a perfect place for a Fratelloni's hardware store. But anyway, that's just another example of a potential, you know, improvement for the neighborhood. So thank you.
Maybe we should mirror in with a little survey stuff and peer through the survey to see if there is any retail stuff with the community engagement to find out if we can get more feedback on what retail services that the community would like. So that's a good, I'll pursue that a little bit.
So
thank you.
Yeah, Lindsay, go ahead.
I was going to say, so Kevin actually suggested that in the chat as well, looking through the survey. So there wasn't a lot of very specific requests other than the microbrewery, or craft brewery. There were a couple, so it's definitely good to read through those comments, but it was more general that people were concerned about the mix of businesses and the vacancies that are happening. We got a lot of comments around that, and we also got a lot of comments around being pro small businesses, that they were seeing a lot of franchises versus small businesses. So those were the 2, I would say, trends that I recall when I read through the hundreds of comments about it. But I know ice cream was brought up a couple of times during the community conversations because Menchie's has left, and I've heard rumor that Dairy Queen will someday be replaced. So something to be in mind there. But actually, I thought it might be a good thing to do as a Facebook poll. So you can actually put out like little mini polls, and it can help boost engagement. And so we could be like, hey, our community development committee is coming up, and we want to talk about, mix of businesses. Like, what do you think should be put? What is Highland Park missing? And that can be a way to engage people and get people to kind of traffic to our different pieces, communication venues, I should say.
I think that is a great idea. So CEC and CDC can have some crosstalk here. Marge, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead with your question.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Maybe this is coming in the ED report later in tonight's meeting, but there was a bullet on Shepherd Development with Johnson Brothers. Do you know anything about that, Tim, or should we save that for later?
I don't know anything specifically about the update with that. I'd have to do a little research. There's so much going on, but I can't answer that, but I will take it into advisement and see if I can figure out more information about that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
unfortunately,
thanks.
Marge.
That's the first I'd heard of it, so thanks.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kathy has a bullet point, but there's no information attached to it. So I think that we'll have to circle back to that at CDC. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for CDC? All right, thank you all. Okay, so the executive director's report. Before, there's just a couple points. Kathy put it in the board packet. And it looks like Brad's gonna scroll through and find it. Before we jump into that, I want to make sure that we have a better opportunity for new business. I know when I do public comment, it helps me if people put their name in the chat. And sometimes there's more than one person, not always, not often. And take a note of that. So anytime from now through the last couple items, if you have a new or other business item, put your name in the chat and then I won't miss you, and I'll try to give a little more opportunity for that at the end. Also, if you know you're going to bring a new business item, feel free to email Kathy and myself or exec ahead of time, because that just helps me to know that there's time. That is by no means a requirement, but if you know, go ahead and reach out. But otherwise, I'll try and give more than one opportunity. So I just wanted to highlight business of the month. We are in need of more volunteers to help make that happen. It's not a big commitment to reach out to the committees or to reach out to the business, but I think that we need some more people outside of CEC. And so consider volunteering for that. And really, if we do it once a month, really, we should probably have every board member volunteer 1 month. And if we pulled in a few more community members, you'd only have to do it once in your 2-year term, and that would spread it out. So that's something that CEC can talk about and maybe make a more formal plan and bring back to us. But I just want to highlight, and CEC can also chime in and let us know the value of that program. The HDC holiday party with the HBA will be on Thursday, November 18th at 5:30 at TIFF. So everybody here is invited. And the last thing, is somebody trying to get my attention on these topics? Okay, sorry. And then I just wanted to mention that phase 2 of Lexington Landing is going to be starting. And the county was able to update the left-hand turn light from Montreal onto West 7th. So there's an arrow now. I just went through that intersection this morning and it is super having that arrow. And I think those are the things I specifically wanted to highlight. All right.
What time is the party on the 18th?
At 5:30.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, unfortunately, Kathy Bell is not here for a Riverview Corridor update, but we will have them at our transportation meeting on Tuesday. And so we for sure will have an update next month or I guess that's January's board meeting. If there's anything that's time sensitive, transportation will email the board prior to that. Anne, are you still here to?
I am.
Great, thanks.
The only thing that is going on in the HBA right now which you mentioned earlier, was the trick or treat in Highland, and it was a fabulous event. There was, I think the number that I heard was about 1,000 participants, which is crazy. And it was a beautiful day, and James did a great job of posting pictures on social media, and it was just a really a fun event, and it was a beautiful day. And so for those of you that got to participate in that, thank you for that. And now we're just gearing up for the holiday event and also the joint happy hour. That's what's happening. Just fun stuff.
Yay, fun stuff. I mean, we heard lots of positive feedback on fun stuff in the neighborhood.
Good.
Marge, go ahead, please.
Hey, Ann, I was just wondering, the business of the month thing came up in Kathy's report. And I was just wondering how that's presented with HBA, and is that how we generally get our business of the month? If you could expand on that.
Actually, you know what? I don't have any details on that for you, Marge. It is not, it was not something that I had any information on, but if you have any questions about that, I'm sure you can contact James.
Marge, it comes out of CEC.
Yes, yeah, it's actually run by the Community Engagement Committee.
Yeah.
So I was aware of that, but I thought it might be wonderful to approach HBA, and it might save some legwork and see if they have discussion there on who would be eager to do that. I don't know. It just
That's
seems
a
like
good idea.
an efficiency kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know last year we'd also talked about potentially trying to partner with some people as well. So something to definitely look at.
We'll be in touch with Anne.
I'm not sure that I'm the person you should be in touch with, but you could certainly, I could certainly be the go-between, but it probably would have to come from probably the president of the HBA and or James, the executive director.
Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
Marge, do you have go ahead. I just now saw that there's a lot going on in the chat. I saw you have some other questions on the Kathy's report.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we moved on from that fast, so I just threw it in the chat. Is that just trash for that environmental contract reimbursement? Is that like trash and recycling? What is that?
Tom, can you, I don't know where this is at.
It's the first point under administrative stuff.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Do you know what the environmental contract reimbursement is, Tom? Because I'm sorry, I don't off the top of my head.
I do not know off the top of my head either.
And then the engagement work reimbursement with Zan. Let's see, this I think I do know something about. Where's that at, Marge?
That's like the 4th or 5th point down under her little report. That just sounded like a nice thing to get reimbursed.
Yes. And that's for the Lexington Phase 2 realignment. I think that's the firm that the county hired to do some outreach. All right. We're doing actually.
You mean like the traffic light? What do you mean? Is that what you mean?
So south of Montreal, so phase 1 of the realignment is the part that is now open. So you have West 7th, and to the north of it, Lexington is rerouted around the new development. And then phase 2 is south of West 7th. And so right now there's just the first block is put in place. And there was a bunch of engagement done with the neighbors south of there, because there's a large area of city right away that the city is going to claim. It's like just open green space there's a large apartment building there. And then there's a question about, depending on how the city routes that, there is one home that might be impacted from eminent domain. And so Lexington Parkway is going to go south across West 7th and connect down to Shepherd Road more directly. And that the last time we saw that in transportation was a couple months ago, and they're still considering the design options. And so I think that's the outreach engagement for that piece of it. That's my understanding from this note.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome. Okay, we're doing surprisingly okay on time. I thought we had a really full agenda tonight, so everyone's done a nice job keeping it to the point. So new business. I don't see any comments in the chat, but does anybody have any new business?
Madam President, I can bring something.
Sure, Marge.
Well, I guess we kind of passed it again in the executive report by Kathy. There was discussion and paperwork in our packet about the election. There's going to be an election in December. So I guess I think it's important to talk about that here tonight.
Sure.
I guess I'll follow up, Michelle. it seems am I correct that we're just talking about at large? Because I think we have a grid 11 issue with, unfortunately, our representative not making it.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and just move to an executive session to discuss these items. Exec has an ongoing discussion regarding these two items and we're a little bit, so I think it'd be best if we just close the meeting and move to an executive session to address these questions regarding board vacancies. Does anybody?
I'm not sure what that means, Michelle.
Okay, so an executive session is for board members only. It's a closed meeting that's not open to the public and isn't reported. And if other members of exec want to chime in, I think that this discussion would best be had in that context.
So I guess I'd recommend that we do new business before we close off. that
Oh, of
meeting.
course, of course.
Thanks.
Tom, or did you have a comment? Does anyone else from exec want to chime in on this, like on moving to an executive session on this topic?
I think we should just finalize to have any new business. If anybody wants to have a new business,
Okay,
let's bring it up. If we don't have any new business, then I think we should move to a closed session.
okay, Tom, go ahead.
Same comment as Tim.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other new business that's not related to board positions or vacancies? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to, I think we're actually a few minutes ahead, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. We'll give a moment for anybody who's still here from the public or presenting to leave the meeting, and then we will move to an executive session, which is a closed meeting.
And then we'll stop recording that as, we
Yes,
won't
thank
record that
you.
as well, right?
Yes, correct. It was not recorded and minutes are not kept and reported. Are there any questions just on the format of a closed session? I've never run one before for disclosure.
I'm going to stop recording now, Michelle.
Thank you, Jenna.
Mm-hmm.
And so technically, so Jenna